Am I wrong for telling my friend to stop flaunting her money and calling her a gold digger? I, 39 female, have been best friends with Jill, 40 female, since we were in high school. Between the two of us, she's always been a bombshell. Blonde, tall, slim, big boobs, etc. She never dated anyone in high school, which was weird to me because almost everyone in our school did, including myself. When we were in college and she was still turning guys down, I asked her why, and she said that she wants someone who is financially stable. I laughed it off at the time. I should also mention she grew up poor, as in her mother was going to the food bank poor. After we graduated, she got a job at a gym teaching yoga. I continued my education to be a teacher. She eventually met someone at the gym, and he's rich. Like, I can't even comprehend the kind of money this guy has. Fast forward to now, they're married with 2 kids, and I believe she signed a prenup when they married. We went out to dinner this past Saturday with 2 other friends from college, and she wanted to go to a very expensive place, her treat. She does this a lot, wants her money, clothes, trips, everything. I always tried to smile and ignore it, but it has been slowly bothering me. The dinner was going fine until one of our friends, Amanda, asked Jill what she planned for her birthday. Jill said that her husband and her are going to Greece for 3 weeks. Amanda and Sharon both made comments about how nice and lovely that is, and I kind of scoffed at it. When Jill asked me what was wrong, I admittedly lost it. I told her I'm tired of her flaunting her money at everyone all the time, and everyone knows she only married her husband for money. They got really quiet for a couple of seconds, and to my surprise, Jill very calmly asked if that's what everyone really thought. I said yes. Jill then asked if it was at all possible that she initially dated him for his money, but she fell in love with him along the way. Both of our friends said, of course. At the same time, I said no. I told her she fell in love with what he can provide for her. She then asked me if I love what my boyfriend provides for me, which is way different because I never started dating him for those things. She countered that with, of course you did. If you were just attracted to him, but he wasn't loving, providing, caring, you wouldn't still be in a relationship with him. And if you were, it would be an unhappy and unhealthy one. I argued it's still not the same thing. She then stood up and said that she has other places to be and not to worry about the bill. She left, and then 3 of us finished our meals in silence. When the server came around, he handed me the bill for my meal only. She paid for herself and the other 2, but left me to pay for an almost $50 meal that I really couldn't afford. I texted her and called her an asshole. She replied saying not to message her again until I apologized for my earlier comments. I admit I must have been too hard, but I don't think I'm wrong, so am I the asshole?
Am I the arsehole for walking out the airport when I saw my mother-in-law standing with her luggage? Story time. So I've never had a good relationship with my husband's mother. She would always make remarks comparing me to her, and then one day she just switched up and started overly praising me all the time. She then started copying me, which was a little bit strange. One time she even dyed her hair purple just so she couldn't match me. And then when everyone started to point out how ridiculous she looked, she blamed me. She accused me of trying to make a joke out of her. So I decided to take my husband on a little anniversary trip. A keynote here, I was pretty much paying for everything. I was paying and my husband was responsible for booking the tickets and the hotel, you know, all the boring stuff. Steve's mum really wanted to come along for some reason, and when we told her we didn't want her there, you have never seen a 6-year-old woman throw a tantrum like this before. We said it's for our anniversary, why would you want to be there? She would send me texts, she would call me, and she even sent people round to our house to talk me into letting her go. This woman even threatened to call the police and make up a complaint about me. My husband said we should just give in and let her come, and I kept saying no, it's weird. My husband Steve then turned round and was like, well, if she can't come, I'm not going. So one day he went round and he had a word with her. And after that, things got quieter. Suspiciously quieter. So the day of the trip came and I was so excited. When we got to the airport, Steve was walking ahead of me and he was like looking all around as if he was looking for someone. I was like, who are we looking for here? And he just didn't respond. He then led me into the waiting area, and then that was where I saw my mother-in-law stood there with all of her luggage. I froze on the spot. I felt a cold wave come over me. Steve was hugging his mum, and that's when I quietly turned around and I walked out the airport. Steve was yelling at me to stop, but I was gone. He tried saying that his mum was there anyway now and that we shouldn't miss out on a trip like this. I said he was more than welcome to still go with his mum, and then I just got a taxi and went home. I cried into my dog's fur for hours. Turns out he had booked her tickets when he went round to talk to her about not going. He called me when they'd landed to let me know that they were there safe, but then went on to yell at me saying how selfish I was, that I'd ruined their trip. I couldn't be bothered arguing anymore, so I just put the phone down. But Steve then called my family and told them that I'd ruined the anniversary trip. Some of them are on my side, but a lot of them say that it's my fault and I'm in the wrong. So what do you think?
Story time of my first time sneaking out in high school as an Arab girl with strict-ish parents. I should clarify because that was my first and last time. Now that I'm married, I just confessed the story to my mom the other day and she was unbothered, so I feel like I could share this with you guys now. So I was in high school and all my friends every weekend had a party and they kept telling me like, why don't you come to the parties? You should come. And of course, as an Arab girl, like I can't go to no party. But of course I had to keep up my cool girl persona I had going on in high school. I couldn't be like, no, my parents won't let me. Like I always had an excuse like, oh, I'm going to the other party this weekend. Or like, oh, I already have plans, maybe next time. So I knew there was this party coming up in my neighborhood, okay? It was like literally walking distance and me and my cousins were like, we have to go to this party. Like we have to go. My cousins didn't go to the same school, but we had kind of like the same friends. Like I was friends with their friends, they were friends with mine. So we're like, okay, like this is a party to go to this year. We literally had to plan to go to this party like weeks in advance. So we came up with this whole game plan and we're like, we're gonna sleep at one of my cousin's house who has like a chiller mom, right? And we'll just make her a part of the plan and convince her to let us go. And my cousins were on the same boat. They've never been to a party, never snuck out. We're pretty like good girls. Like we felt guilty doing this. So we all ganged up and proposed a plan to my aunt and we're like, can we all just sleep over and let us go to our party, but don't tell the rest of our moms. And by the way, the rest of our moms are all like sisters and siblings. She says yes, we're all so excited. We tell our parents we're sleeping at our aunt's house, which we were. So the girls are so excited. We're all together like getting dressed up for our first party. The vibes are right. And we end up driving over to the party, which is in my community. Halfway going there, one of my cousins like felt the guilt and she was like, oh my God, no, something bad is gonna happen because like we're not telling our parents the full truth. So she had us go and take her back home. So the plan was we're just gonna go show face so people know like we're not lame and we go to parties and just leave. Like we're not gonna do anything. By the time we actually get there, like the party's been going on, okay? Like this is a high school party. So we get there, literally show face for like 5 minutes. I'm seeing my friends. I'm like, hey guys, like acting all cool. And within literally 10 minutes of us being there, the cops raided the party. Once the cops show, we freak out instantly. We're like, we literally can't get caught. Like, no, this can't be happening. So, you know, as soon as the cops show, we sprint our way out. So we're like making our way to the parked car, which is like a 5-minute walk. Of course, on our way, we're sprinting to the car. The cops freaking stop us. Like, where are y'all ladies going this late in the night? And we're like, oh, no, we're just walking. And they're like, did you drive out tonight? Were you at that party? So they ask for our IDs. We give them their IDs. They see we're 16 and they're like, you're not allowed to drive when you're 16 past 10 p.m. And then they go, we're going to need to contact your parents. At that point, the whole issue with the cops wasn't the party. It's the fact that we were driving past 10 p.m. And the problem is we were in my community. So if I told them we just walked over from my house, we didn't drive, they could have showed up at my parents' house. My parents think I'm at my cousin's house. So if the cops show up, like my life is over. So of course, this party is in my community and the cops are like, we need your address. Like if you drove over here in big trouble, so you better tell me that you walked over here. They're telling us like, we need to speak with your parents. Like this is not okay. And I just started telling the cops like, please no, my parents will kill me. Like I'm Arab. Like no, can I take you to my sister's house instead? All my cousins are freaking out. Some of them start crying and having like full-on panic attacks on the side. And I have to deal with the cops and I'm like, please just let us go. Like we're good girls. Like we never do this. Imagine the cops going to my house and being like, here's your daughter. She was at a party sneaking out. Like, imagine! So the girl plays along. She's like, oh yeah, she's with us. Like, we came together. We're riding together. They were just waiting on us. And they play along. And I think at that point, the cops just gave up. And they were like, you know what? Like, let these girls go. I don't know. God was on our side. And as soon as they let us go, we ran our ways to our freaking car. And got the hell out of there. And went home. And we were like, what just happened? Like, we're never going out again. We're never going to another party again. We're never sneaking out again. And yeah, that's pretty much the only time we've ever snuck out. And we were like, it wasn't worth it. Like, we didn't even have fun. So now that I'm married, I tell my mom like the story and I'm like, oh my gosh, this and this happened and your sister is the one that let us go. And when I told her, she was so unfazed, like she couldn't care less. And she's like, okay, you were a teen, like not that big of a deal. And I'm like, okay.
I had a low-key mentee bee the other day. It's gonna sound weird as to why this gave me a mentee bee, but just like a little backstory is that for some reason, every man I've spoken to wants to become an influencer after we talk. Just like it's really weird about my job. So like it's a sensitive fucking subject for me. This motherfucker likes me on Hinge and he's like, hey, I followed you on Insta. I don't think you'll see it. This is my Insta. Like would love to talk to you more there. And he's cute. So I'm like, why would I not? My Instagram, I have a lot of like my podcast promotion clips, like the little clips that you guys probably see on here that are promoting whatever week it is, like podcast episode. I also have a shit ton of slutty photos of me. Like, it's like podcast promotion, but also like I'm looking like an absolute whore. I'm looking absolutely gorgeous. Like I'm looking stunning. You can go look, but it's not just flooded with the fucking podcast clips, okay? It's just like here and there. Every Friday, you guys get a clip. But this man DMs me and is like, oh my God, like I love your clips. Like they're so funny, your podcast clip. I'm not thinking anything of it, but then he's like, no, literally, like I can't stop watching them. I'm like, okay, like I'm funny. I'm not that fucking funny. Like you don't have to watch the clips like a million times in a row.
He's like, we should get coffee sometime. I'm like, yeah, sure. Like, yeah, for sure. Once again, he's like, I can't stop watching them. There's so many of them. I'm like, okay, I don't know how I feel about that. Like, why are we still talking about my podcast clips? Then he's asking me, he's like, what do you use to edit the podcast clips? And immediately I'm like, okay, what the fuck? And I'm like, oh, I don't use anything. Like, I have an editor and she edits the videos for me. This man goes, damn, I thought you were the mastermind behind it all. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, haha, like, I am. Because I'm the bitch talking in the clips. I'm like, haha, I am. I like, just tell her what clips I would like edit it for this week's episode and she edits all of them. At this point, I'm like, okay, this is very clear. This man could give a fuck about me and clearly wants to fuck the shit out of my editor because he's so impressed by her editing skills. Like, rightfully so. My editor is fucking, I can't even take myself serious. Editor's fucking amazing. I love her. That's why she works with me. She is apple to my eye. Like, could not be any happier with what she does for me. Like, love her to death, but she's not something I want to talk about with men that want to take me on dates. Like, why am I going to sit and talk about her for hours? Ben goes, well, what editing software does she use? At this point, I'm like, okay, this just sparked a mentee fucking be like, this man could care less about me. He really just wants to know about like the editing of the clips or whatever. I'm just fucking over it because I'm so sick and tired of like, it's such a trigger for me, you guys. Like, it's such a trigger. Because in the past, like, I have fully sucked a man's dick and we were like vibing, so I like liked a man. And then the next day he was like, we should collab. And like, collab, like I would be the only one posting him, like I was the only one with followers, and like to get a message, like it makes you feel a little shitty. Like my work and men should never be in the same sentence together. Like, so now I'm like pissed the fuck off and I'm like, okay, this is annoying. Like I literally don't want to talk to this guy anymore. If you're wondering why I'm being dramatic and shit, it's because a bitch gets triggered by this. Like obviously you would get triggered too if you sucked a man's and he was like, let's collab. After the man asks me about my editor's software editing, like what editing she fucking uses, I'm like, okay, this is not a man I want to continue to talk to. Like I don't want to talk to someone when it's only about my work. Like that's weird as fucking shit. I'm so fucking triggered by this. Like I'm sending this to one of my hoes being like, is this not weird as shit? And he's like, no, it's weird as shit, Livy. Like I'm like, this is just so fucked up. Like I'm so over this shit. Like why the fuck are you asking me about my editor's software editing? Like I don't know. The next day rolls around because I left this man on red and I'm just expecting to like never really talk to him again. No, I get a DM from this man and he goes, didn't know it was that much of a secret, talking about my fucking editor's editing software that I have no idea about. I literally responded, I'm like, I have no idea what she uses to edit. Like I do not know. And you're probably like, Livy, you're like weirdly triggered by this. You want to know why I'm weirdly fucking triggered by this? Since I gained a following, the men I've dated since then are fucking weird. One time I was having a conversation with a man in bed after we were literally, okay, we did fuck. We were literally just like sitting and talking and he was telling me about his life goals and dreams. He's like, yeah, I just like want my Instagram to look really good. And I'm like, oh, like 0.5 makes your Instagram look really good. And after I said it, I go, just making sure like you're not using me like I have a past with men, just like really being obsessed with my job. He's like, God, no, like I'd never use you, but like what other tips do you have? And I'm like, and I was dumb and I gave him tips. I gave a man influencing. I did that. Why? I don't know. I was a dumb bitch. If you're gonna post a picture, post it in 0.5. It looks great. If you go and look at this motherfucker's Instagram, every single post is in 0.5. Like the man is clearly trying to become an influencer. It's like go walking, like do your thing, but like don't use me in the process. You know what? Maybe I am just sounding like an entitled fucking cunt and I just sound like a bitch. It's like you're an influencer, like that's your fucking job. And I love it. I love influencing. I love influencing you guys. You guys want any tips and tricks, I'll let you fucking know what to use, what's the best. Just not the men I'm fucking. Like the men I'm fucking, can I have one break where I don't have to tell you what software editing thing my editor uses and like that 0.5 is so fucking good for Instagram. And like, can I just get dick down without you asking me like, what's the trick to blowing up on TikTok? Can I just get dick without you being so in my fucking business? Can I just do that without you asking to collab and like do these things, all these things? Can I just be a whore in private and we don't even talk about my work? Like, please. I might sound like a cunt and I get that. It's just that I'm fed the fuck up. Like, I am fed up with the men. It's really just the fucking men that I'm talking to as well. Like, if you're a man and you want influencer tips from me, babe, I guess I'll start a fucking masterclass. And I honestly don't even look at myself as one of those like trendy influencers that like I know the tips and tricks. I just do what works for me. But I just want to get dick in peace.
I haven't worked a regular job in over 2 years, but every job I ever had, I absolutely hated. So I had to get creative with the ways that I would call in sick to work. My first ever retail job was ice design, and it was the most toxic workplace I'd ever been in, but I was 17 at the time, so I was like, I'll accept it, like whatever. Any chance I had to pull out of work, I would. And I know it's not a good work ethic, but at the time I was 17 and I was sick of the abuse. So I was like, you know what? Like if something comes up with my friends, I'm gonna go do it. I always had the mentality of like, if I'm telling you that I'm having a day off, like I've already told you. It's not like I'm asking like, I've told you, and you got to find someone to cover me. I know, a bit of a nightmare employee, but look, that's why I started working for myself, because I was like, I need that control of my time. I was the kind of person where I went through my party phase relatively early. Like, I literally had a fake ID and I went clubbing when I was 16, 17. So by the time I got to like 18, 19, I was like, I'm done with this. Like, I've been out here, I've been on these streets for a minute, like I'm done. Which is probably why I'm semi-retired now, because I'm like, you know what, like I'm chill. I just want to be in my home. It's all good. But at the time, I was out from like Thursday to Sunday night, sometimes even the weekdays. You could not contain me. I would be out all hours of the night, knowing damn well I had a shift the next day, but I would just think like, you know what, I'll be fine, like I've got this. And then the next day would come, I hadn't slept, and I'd be like, okay, I'm not fine, like I can't work. So quite often it would get to the morning and I would have no choice but to send a text to my manager and say, hey, so sorry, oh my God, I've woken up with a cough, like I'm sick. But one time in particular, I wasn't actually partying or anything. It was actually during the day. I was actually just having a really fun day with my friend. Like I went kayaking and I was down at this like really beautiful creek, and it was the most beautiful sunny day. And I was like, I don't want to work. The store that I was working at had like the worst operating hours as well. Like it opened at 9 a.m. and closed at 9 p.m. So quite often like I could have a work day from like 8 a.m. to like 10 p.m., 11:30 because of how far away the store was from my house. So this day in particular, I was having the most amazing day outside with my friend, and then I was meant to start work at 6 p.m. or like 4 p.m. or something, and I was like, I don't want to do that. But by this time, I had already utilized pretty much all of the excuses under the sun. I was like brainstorming and I was like, what can I like say that's going to sound believable but isn't like crazy? And then I thought, oh, I'll just pretend that like my mum can't pick me up, because I didn't actually get my license until I was 18. So even when I was 17, I actually had to rely on lifts from my mum. I was like, oh, I'll pretend that my mum can't pick me up. That way it's not my fault. I actually want to come into work, but I just can't get there. And they knew that I lived somewhere that wasn't accessible to public transport. So it was kind of like, unless they expected me to pay for an Uber, which was kind of unreasonable, then I couldn't come in. So in my head, this was foolproof. I was like, there is no way that they can say anything aside from, oh, bummer, like we'll see you next shift. But I got a call from the manager and I was like, oh shit, okay, I should probably answer. She called me and she said, hey, oh my God, like I'm so sorry that your mum couldn't come get you. That's so fine. I'll come pick you up. And I was like, oh really? Like, oh my God, no way. That would be so amazing because I have no way there. And she's like, yeah, it's no problem at all. Like, I'll come pick you up. Mind you, this was like a 40-minute drive. And so I was like, oh, you sure? Like, I live so far away. Like, don't worry about picking me up. It's okay. Like, I don't mind. And this was obviously just because she'd been on all day and she was like, I don't want to stay back for you. Like, I'll come pick you up. I'll drop you off at work. You can work and I'll go home. Fair enough. Looking back, I'm like, okay, fair enough. Like, you know what? She got paid for that drive as well. Like, that's a good time. But to me, I was like, no fucking way. Like, no fucking way. So then I had no way of getting out of work. I was like, I've used like my excuse of no transport. She was literally offered to come pick me up. There's nothing I can say. So I had to cop it and go to work. I don't know about you, but I've never heard of a manager, especially at a retail store, offering to come and pick you up 40 minutes away to drop you at work. Goes to show how desperate she was to get out of that place too. So after that, I knew those excuses were dead. I was like, okay, I can't say that I'm sick. I can't say that I have no transport because these people are wizards. They're gonna find a way that I get myself to work. So another time I was desperate. I was like, I'm gonna go out. I do not want to go to work. It was a stupid 3-hour shift anyway. I was like, what can I say? Like, I do not want to do this. So I was sitting there brainstorming and I was like, what is foolproof? Gastro. I'm gonna tell them that I have gastro. That way it's super contagious. I have to, like, I can't go see anyone. I'm gonna make people sick if they see me. They can't say anything except for, oh, rest up. So the gastro excuse worked. It was foolproof. And I was like, holy shit, like, absolutely yes. But I did not think it through. First of all, obviously gastro is extremely contagious, which I thought in the moment was a great idea. But when it came to actually coming back to work, I had to prove that I wasn't contagious anymore. So this plan in theory was great until it actually came to me coming back to work. And then I was screwed because obviously I didn't have a doctor's certificate and I couldn't go and tell them that I had a like gastro at the doctor's. They weren't going to believe me. But I didn't actually know this until I came into work. So this day in particular was actually the day that I quit. Basically it was like an hour trip to get there. I show up to work. I'm like, okay, like let me get through this 3-hour shift. But when I get there, the assistant manager was like, oh, do you have a doctor's note? Like we can't let you work today unless you have a doctor's note. And I was like, doctor's note for what? I'm okay. Like, I feel better. Like, I feel so much better. And then said, oh, no, you need to have a doctor's note just to make sure that you're not contagious. I was like, what? Like, I don't have a doctor's note. Like, I told you I feel better. Like, can you just take my word for it? And she was like, we know, like, usually you wouldn't need one, but because you said you had gastro, you're gonna need a doctor's note. Karma kind of bit me on the ass with this because I was like, fuck, like, I don't have a doctor's note. Like, oh my God. So I called my manager and I was like, hey, I don't have a doctor's note, but I've come all this way. Can I just work? I promise I feel better. Like, it's gonna be okay. She basically said, you can't work. You can't be there unless you have a doctor's note. And that's when I turned around, I took my lanyard off, I handed it to the assistant manager and I was like, I I quit because I had no doctor's note, and I was like, you know what, I'm just going to accept defeat and keep my head high and mighty while I can and quit while I'm ahead. So I quit my job because I had gastro. This pattern of me not wanting to work flowed into all of my jobs that I had. I did not like working for other people. When I used to work at Foot Locker, I actually loved the job for a while until the cracks started to show, and then I was like, fuck this, like I hate this place too. I actually worked at the Pac Fair store upstairs outside, and so the closest toilets were the ones that were like outdoors, and they actually have a couch in there. So quite often I would be like, oh, I'm going to the bathroom, and like no one's going to question how long you're in the bathroom. I would actually go in there and sit on the couch and just sit on my phone. One time in particular, I don't know why it came up in conversation, but basically I admitted that like, yeah, I go and like sit on the couch in the toilet, like fuck this place, like oh my god. At the time it was someone that I didn't think was going to say anything to anyone, and I was just having like a bit of a laugh because we both hated this place equally, I thought. Anyway, Foot Locker has this thing where they like do a review with their employees every couple of months, and that came up in my review, and they were like, hey, like do you sit in the couch in the bathroom? And I was like, no. What? Like, what the fuck? Like, I didn't even know there was a couch. Is there a couch in there? Like, oh, that's weird. Like, so I was like, holy shit, like someone has told them that I literally go and sit on the couch. Again, towards the end of that job, I ended up just hating it. So I started to try and come up with ideas of like getting out of work, except I had a full-time position. So I couldn't just call in sick willy-nilly like I would with a casual position. So one time in particular, it was like towards the end of my position there, I was so sick of it. I can't remember how I came up with this, but basically, it's so embarrassing, but I literally faked a limp while I was in there because I didn't want to be there. I literally was walking around like this. I was walking around like pretending that I had like sprained my ankle, and I was like in a fucking retail job, like limping around, pretending that I had a limp because I didn't want to be in this job. Like, someone should have just fired me on the spot that day. It's probably one of the most embarrassing things. Like, that's how desperate I was to get out of these work situations. I faked a limp. I didn't even end up getting sent home, so I literally faked a limp the entire shift, mind you. Like, I didn't just like play it off like it got better. Like, I literally faked a limp the whole time, even leaving work. Like, when I was walking past the doors, like I faked my whole shift. But I think that's just a sign that I've always needed to like work for myself anyway. I just don't think I have the capacity to be under someone's thumb. And I think some people are bored and they're like fine with that, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like, if that makes you happy, if you're okay with that, like that's fine. Like, my whole family is from the traditional background, like that's fine. I have nothing against that. It just never sat well with me. Like, authority, I just don't know what it is. Like, even school, I did not like school, like at all. As an adult, luckily I don't have to deal with any of that anymore, because obviously if there's a job that I don't want to do, I just don't do it.
My 36 female fiance 36 male is accusing me of faking a pregnancy. For the sake of this post, I'll be referring to my ex-fiance as M. We both had pretty bad endings to our previous relationship, so we decided to take things slow. We dated for 3 years before we moved into our apartment together, and then lived here for another 2 years before he proposed. We loved each other, kitchen dancing, so much laughter. We adopted 2 pups, we both loved our jobs, and we were dedicated to them and financially secure. We discussed having a baby and decided that we should wait until we purchased a home and get married. Somehow, that's not what was meant to be, and I ended up pregnant within weeks. Nervousness slowly turned into excitement. He held my hair while I was throwing up. He came to every single appointment, ultrasound, saw and felt her move around. We already loved her so damn much. Had her nursery ready and had her name already picked out. Just over the moon. I drive for a living. I move cars from dealership to dealership, auction to auction, do customer drop-offs, etc. I was called into work and decided we needed the extra pay and hours to help with maternity leave and went in. I was over halfway done with my shift when I was T-boned by a drunk driver. Took everything from me. He took my daughter, and he took the love my fiance and I had for one another away. I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep, I couldn't get out of bed. I hated the world. My fiance, who was caring at first, became distant, which is to be expected because he lost her too. Yet now he accuses me of cheating. I never did. Of lying about the pregnancy. He went to every appointment. If I even remotely bring her up, he gets violent and locks me outside with no keys, wallet, and like right now, no jacket. It's cold, I'm tired, I miss what my life used to be. He's refusing therapy and I'm not sure what else to do. Do I leave? Do I continue to get him to open up and risk my safety? Or do I just act like our daughter never existed? She does have a little small update. For everyone that gave me the warning of leaving, as much as I still don't want to, it's for the best. I was left out of the house at 5 a.m. After 8 long hours in the cold. He was blackout drunk and still angry. I made the mistake of grabbing the bottles and pouring it down the drain and pay the consequences. The man I loved is gone. The person that replaced him is a monster. I'm currently waiting in the emergency room to be checked out for a head injury and some scratches on my neck. This was not him. This is not his true colors. Grief just took him away and replaced him with someone that I don't know and never want to know. Any of you experience any loss, please do not let it take you away from your loved ones. Seek therapy, cry, get it out. Don't let it replace you.
I'm dating my sister's ex. So growing up, I have always been the black sheep of the family. My sister has been the favorite. It's always been things like, why can't you be more like your sister? Why can't you be more like your sister? Blah, 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 blah. And I'm not saying this is an excuse. I'm just saying, and let's just set it up so you can kind of maybe understand where I'm coming from. My sister had this boyfriend, let's call him Dylan. They were both older than me growing up, so I just kind of had like this little schoolgirl crush. He was just like really nice to me. My parents really weren't that nice to me. Like I said, black sheep of the family. I just wasn't as smart as her, wasn't as pretty as her, wasn't as ambitious as her. And in my family, all of those things are how you get loved, okay? It's just not given freely in this household. I finally turned 18, I graduate high school, I have no intention of going to college, and I actually end up donating my college fund, and that really pisses my dad off, and he ends up cutting me off after lots of back and forth. The final nail on the head is when I called him out about his mistress when he came home to my mom's birthday dinner late. I had stopped by to see her, spend time with her, because I knew he wasn't going to make it because that's who he is. He didn't like that, so he took my car away from me, and that meant I had to walk back to my apartment from their house, which was about 5 miles, so it was like a good trek. On my way home, Dylan happens to be driving by and he stops and he's like, what are you doing walking home? Get in my car, I'll take you home. Hadn't seen him in a while, so we catch up a little bit. I tell him about my dad. He's very familiar with my dad and his ways, and I'm like telling him about how I have this ex-boyfriend who's also my friend, and I just didn't really feel that way towards him, and he cheated on me, all this stuff. We're like really getting into the nitty-gritty. We're like talking. We've always been friendly, so finding that like back and forth banter together was very easy. It was like we hadn't missed any time together. The next day, I am at the diner getting breakfast/brunch with ex-boyfriend/friend, and he ends up going to the bathroom, and Dylan sees me, and he walks over to me. He leans down and whispers in my ear, "You deserve better." Excuse me? And then just walks off without anything else. Obviously, I'm having a mini panic attack after that because I've always had a crush on him, and I was like, please don't do this to me because I will fall in love with you. And we haven't seen each other in years, but you know, like when you get a new car and all of a sudden you've never seen that car before, but you start seeing it everywhere? That's exactly what happened with him. We hadn't seen each other for years, but now that we've seen each other once, we just keep running into each other over and over again. My roommate and I are getting coffee a couple days later, and he ends up he's there, and he buys my roommate and I coffee, and my roommate invites him to my birthday party, which I was like, obviously I want him to come, but I'm nervous because like, what if he doesn't show up, and just all these things. Pretty important birthday party. It's my 21st birthday party, so like obviously I'm very excited. Everybody's gonna be there, and now I'm like hoping that he shows up and he brings me the best birthday gift ever. He knows that I'm like kind of like an aspiring artist and I want to like create my own shop, so he brings me all this stuff to help me, and it's like the most thoughtful gift anyone has ever given me, and I'm like, that's so sweet, thank you so much for coming, I didn't think you were gonna come. We're in an area right now where nobody can see us, and we're doing that thing, you know, when you're talking to somebody that you're attracted to and like you just keep getting closer and closer and closer, and finally he's just like, tell me not to do this, and I'm like, I'm not gonna tell you not to do this, and then we kiss. And now I've kissed my sister's ex-boyfriend and the guy I've always had a crush on, and now I don't know what to do. But you know, sometimes the heart wants what it wants.
Story time of my parents finding my diary. I'm 22 and I grew up with really strict parents. In the 9th grade, I had a diary where I would just write about my day, including my boy crushes. And then one day I couldn't find my diary. You know, I figured I just like misplaced it somewhere, like it's fine, I'll find it. And then a few days later, my dad calls me out and he's literally standing there holding my diary. So he actually decided to read through it, and he read an entry where I talked about how I walked by my boy crush and we said hi to each other. Let's just say he beat the shit out of me that day. He literally thought that because I said hi to my crush that I was sleeping with him. Anyways, they threatened to send me to boarding school. They grounded me for a month. Thank God they didn't actually send me away, but yeah, I got in trouble, was grounded for a month. Continue going to school, but let's just say I no longer write in a diary anymore. Guys, this story hit so deep for me because literally when I was 8 years old, I had this Barbie laptop, which it wasn't an actual laptop. You could just play games on it, and one was write a love letter. So in my little Barbie laptop, I would write love letters to this character on Animal Crossing. He was a squirrel. His name was Agent S. I just had the biggest crush on him. I was like, I want to get married. I want to have your kid. Anyway, so this Barbie laptop generated like a love letter. So I copied that love letter down. I just wrote it on a piece of paper for some reason. My dad found that piece of paper, and when I explained to him that it was about a squirrel and whatever, blah, 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 I got in so much trouble. And that piece of paper was never thrown away. I think it got behind the couch or whatever. And then one day, a few years later, when I was like 12 years old, my dad found it again. The same paper from before, and he got mad again. And I was like, I already got in trouble for this, but I got in trouble again because it reminded him of how mad he was, and he was so annoyed seeing it. So I got in trouble for something I did 4 years ago. Anyways, hearing that story was so relatable. I was like, I mean, hers was probably much worse because it was actually a real person. So I'm sorry for you, girl.